And Murray, I think when they trap Slimer initially, he's like, "Oh, that wasn't too much of a chore," or something like that. And Ramis just looks over at him like, "What?"
They need the clear space to lay out the trap, and they're like throwing furniture around and shit. He does the thing where he takes the tablecloth off the table.
Oh, he's like, I've always wanted,
all the dishes go flying.
I always wanted to do this.
But the flowers are there. He says the flowers are still standing, but like he trashed like all the dishes and silverware. So that's every scene in the movie is great. The hotel scene is my favorite in the film. It's so funny. There's a ton of great lines. There's a bunch of great bits, and just the physical acting from all three of those guys. Then they have like the montage. After this big battle in the hotel, there was like the montage of them being really successful and going around town.
Yeah.
And I read that montage, a lot of that was just kind of shot like without permits. Like just guerrilla style.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they just kind of had the guys dressed up and were out there running through the streets. Shooting they have a couple of the scenes of the car driving through the city. You can see a lot of people, staring at the cars that's going by. There's a scene, I think I read, the scene where they're at Rockefeller Center. They just caught a ghost and are running through Rockefeller Center, and you can tell it's Rockefeller Center. It's got the big gold statue behind them. I think that scene, they got chased off Rockefeller Center, like, by security. That's why they're running.
Wow, no way.
And just little funny things like that. To go back a bit, in the very beginning of the library, where they're walking through the library, and then at one point the bookcase falls down behind them.
Yeah.
That was unplanned. That just happened. Like, part of the set came down while they were shooting.
So when they look at each other, that's genuine?
Yeah, that's... I think it was unexpected, and I think they just ran with it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it wasn't supposed to happen.
Well, it works.
Yeah. They just thought that it added like some extra tension to that scene in the library, because they're kind of unsure as what's happening. Even when Dana goes to see them for the first time, and she's talking to Janine, who's played by Anthony Potts. She's talking to Janine, and Murray's in his office, Bankman is in his office, and he comes running out from behind his desk and jumps over the railing. Even that wasn't scripted. And he almost doesn't make it over the railing. Like, he barely clears it, because you can hear his feet like hit it. So there's lots of little kind of happy accidents. I mean, we talked about the cigarette in the hotel hanging off Aykroyd's lip,
which is that's, I feel like, become iconic.
Yeah, it's so funny how everyone in this movie is like always smoking.
Yeah. Even if it is the 80s, it's just like so casual.
Yeah, they smoke a lot in the movie. So after they're really successful, this is when Ernie Hudson joins the movie as Winston. And I wanted to ask, because there's a scene where they meet Winston, that Ray and Venkman walk in. They're tired, they're beat, they look like they got some slime on them. And Janine has just interviewed Winston, and she says, "Hey, this is Winston. He's interviewing for the job." And Ray says, "Great, you're hired. I'm Ray Stantz. This is Pete Venkman." And he says immediately, "Hey, can you help me with this?" That scene ends, and then it cuts to Murray talking to Weaver outside of the Symphony Hall.
Mm-hmm.
and he's talking about her case and, you know, how they're trying to come up with something still. And he's still, like, hitting on her, and he's, like, kind of intimidated by the guy that she's with. But there's that scene, and then it cuts back to the firehouse, which is, by the way, the firehouse is real in New York, but all those interiors are Los Angeles. Because a lot of the movie is shot in New York on location, but a lot of the interiors and even the set for the climax on top of the building, that's all Sony Studios in Los Angeles. But when it cuts back to the firehouse, you know, there's Ray and Winston are loading the trap, and then Egon's taking some readings. Janine tells Venkman that the EPA guy is in his office. But it's like that was a continuation of the scene where they walked in the door and it got broken up by Venkman going to see Dana Barrett. But I feel like that scene was inserted to break that up, because it's clear that that's all happening at the same time, that they're downstairs and Venkman has the visit from the EPA.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I noticed that for the first time watching it this time, in getting ready for the show, that it was, I think the scene is broken up by this segment of Venkman going to see Dana Barrett, as opposed to being a continuous scene with Ray and Winston going down the stairs and then Janine telling Venkman that, you know, he's got the EPA waiting in his office. So the next time you guys watch that movie, look for that scene, because it's inserted in the middle of what should have been a continuous scene. Yeah, because Murray looks beat when they get back.
Yeah.
And he still looks beat when he sees the EPA. And we should mention that the EPA, Walter Peck, is played by William Atherton, who we've talked about on this podcast before, because he kind of plays like the same sleazy character in Die Hard. He's the news guy in Die Hard, and he's also a pretty great sleaze in Real Genius with Val Kilmer, if you've ever seen Real Genius. The EPA becomes involved in the story because they think that, you know, them storing the ghosts is bad for the environment. That, you know, this obviously none of this equipment was tested, none of it was approved. It's all, you know, homemade by these guys. So as I'm watching this movie, the setup for the ending and the setup for the climax is like half of the movie.
Yeah.
Like pretty much after the hotel scene, you know, they have the montage of them doing well, and then we meet Winston and the EPA, and it kind of sets up the last part of the movie.
Because they just kind of go after them and fuck everything up, essentially.
Yeah. The movie, it moves very briskly.
Uh-huh.
And I probably didn't realize it until this, you know, watching it just recently, like, oh, they're already setting up the ending of the movie, and there's still like an hour left to go.
Well, I wanted to give a shout out for Janine, because she's an awesome receptionist for them.
My mom's favorite part in the whole movie is when you know, she's talking to Venkman after she lets him know that the EPA is in his office, and she's like, "Hey, I've been working 2 weeks without a break. You said you would hire more help." And Venkman tells her, "Oh, you know, Janine, you know, someone like you is lucky. You can get a job in the food service or retail industry, no problem." He just kind of blows her off. And that's my mom's favorite scene, is when he blows her off and then she's really pissed off. And the phone rings and she picks it up and goes, "Ghostbusters, what do you want?" She used to repeat that line all the time. Yes, I agree. She is an awesome receptionist. The list of shit that she reads off when she's interviewing Winston is hilarious. It's like any psychic phenomena, any paranormal phenomena, and the theory of the lost city of Atlantis, I think, is the capper. And Ernie Hudson has a great line where he says, "Hey, if there's a steady paycheck in it, I'll believe anything you want." And then as he goes to help Ray, like they're both downstairs smoking. Later on in the film, when they're driving back wherever like he and Ray were, they're both smoking
in the car. Yeah.
In the car. There's a great shot of the car going over the bridge back into Manhattan. But there's a great shot of the car going across the bridge and then like lower Manhattan in the background as it's driving through. Great shot of the Twin Towers that are there as well. Which there's another awesome scene where after the EPA shuts down the grid and the firehouse explodes, and there's that shot of Manhattan looking south down the island, and you can see the Empire State Building, and you can see the Twin Towers in the very background, and you see all the lights coming up. That effect is really cool. I like that shot of those purple streams coming up over lower Manhattan and then moving through the city. So you got I told you before, like you have this very scary scene where the arms come up out of the chair and grab Dana. Mm-hmm. That always was the one that got me when I was a kid. That was the one that always spooked me for a while. Even now, like it's pretty creepy still.
Yeah, the practical, all the practical effects, even when they show like the demons up close, when you can tell it's an actual animatronic rather than like the claymation or whatever, however they did that, those look really good. Yeah, the creature effects are great. There's the funny scene, like right after the really scary scene, there's the funny scene with Lewis at his apartment throwing the party. And then he dumps the jacket into the closet, or throws it on the bed in the other room. And one of those demon dogs is sitting on the bed. And he hears it growl. And he says, "Okay, who brought the dog?" And then the thing just explodes out of the room. And then he goes running down the hall, running out of the building, and the dog is chasing them. And there's a really funny scene of him. The building that he and Dana live in is a real building on Central Park West. The building isn't nearly as tall. The top few floors, and especially the roof, is a matte painting. Mm-hmm. But it's on Central Park West, so that's where Lewis runs to when he's being chased. Runs into the park, and he runs up to Tavern on the Green, and he's like locked outside, and all the fancy people are having their dinner, like just kind of barely look up at him, but aren't really concerned at all. And then he gets attacked by the dog, and there's that shot of him sliding down the glass, and everyone just kind of stops and looks over. And then as soon as he's out of frame, they just go back to eating like it was no big deal. Yeah, he slides down the glass, and then they just like, okay. They're not worried that there's a man screaming out there and being attacked, mauled, possibly eaten by a large animal. They just kind of pause, and then they go back to eating. And everybody thinks it's a bear. And then when Venkman comes by, he's seeing all the commotion out front. He asks the doorman, and the doorman says, "Oh yeah, someone brought a cougar to a party," and it went wild. There's the funny scene that I remember watching it with my best friend Joel. years ago where Lewis, after he's been attacked by a dog, he's possessed by the dog now.